Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Backstage Bikini podcast with your host, Grace. And on today's episode, I'm just going to do a little sit down chit chat going through my journey the last couple of months, but in particular, my post show journey and body image struggles that I've been dealing with. I've been quite open on Instagram and on different podcasts about my struggles the last few months, but I feel it deserved its own podcast, kind of just going through everything in detail because I haven't been, not that I haven't been totally transparent, I just haven't shared it all because it is quite deep and it's quite extensive. So this is why I just wanted to sit down and chat about it all. And I suppose not put it to rest, but, just have it out in the open and hopefully at least one person takes some value from this or is going through something similar and it makes them feel not alone. So get your tea ready, get your cardio on because it's going to be a long one. But I suppose just going back to the earlier years of my life, I know I did another podcast kind of going through my competition journey and how I got started into competing itself. But I suppose just it's important to give this bit of background information when it comes to what I'm struggling with right now, because when it comes to anything that we're struggling with mentally, I have learned that it's never something that has happened so recently, but rather something that, a belief system that we might have from our childhood or something we might have experienced. And that's something I've learned with therapies and stuff the last couple of months, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail at the end of this podcast. But I suppose just going back to childhood and my body back then and how I viewed it. Now, I grew up and I was always quite slim. I touched on briefly, I was very much into my sport. My family was very much into my sport, and I did anything you could possibly think of: basketball, tennis, in school hockey. I did it all, athletics, and I was an absolute sport junkie. Like any chance I got, I would be doing something. I'd be moving my body, I'd be running or whatever it is. So I was sport and exercise obsessed. And that was really just because I was a competitive individual. It had nothing to do with my body. I never tried to exercise to burn calories until a little bit later on in school, I suppose. But growing up, that's how I valued exercise. It made me feel good. I was very competitive and it's just what I loved doing. It's where my kind of passion lied. Fast forward then a couple of years later in school, I went through a little bit of a time where I viewed exercise as a means of burning calories. And I feel like everybody has a similar story in that sense. There was a lot of comparison in my head. It was that time where it was like goals to have a thigh gap and eating less was seen as this cool thing in the kind of later years of school. And I suppose that was like my first introduction to, I suppose, bodies and leaner bodies at that. Now, at the time, I would, in and around kind of fifth and sixth year when I was 17, 18, I used to kind of eat less because I did want to be thinner. And that was the first time I noticed like the physical element come into my head a little bit. And I started viewing exercise as a means of burning calories. And I suppose I used to go on runs a lot. And to be honest, I don't really enjoy running that much, but I used it as a means of kind of burning off calories, anything that kind of I ate. And that was like the first time I noticed, I suppose, disordered tendencies really. Then a couple of years later, I met my partner Ross, and that's when I kind of got introduced to bodybuilding and tracking my macros and all that kind of thing. And I started to eat a little bit more. I started to exercise as a means of feeling strong. And I started tracking my calories and realized that I was eating terribly. I kind of increased my protein and ate a little bit more carbs, and I found myself just a little bit more kind of free with food. And I suppose I found that an element of bodybuilding where it wasn't focused on being lean, it was focused on being strong. And my goals were no longer to have a thigh gap, but to have strong muscular legs. So that's what I worked on for years and years and years. And I suppose then fast forward into when I got into competing, like I touched on in the previous podcast, it was a means to express that competitive side. And I will be totally honest, I didn't get into competing to get leaner, or to be a smaller body, because at the time I very, very much valued being strong and building muscle. Albeit, I still valued how I look and I wanted to be in a good shape, but it wasn't to be very, very lean and get abs or anything like that. It was more to express the competitive side of me that I had lost from getting the concussion through football. So then, as I went through my preps and off seasons, my off season became difficult, and it's difficult for anybody because you go from being lean to, I suppose, a normal body. And after seeing yourself lean for so long, we all know it's a struggle. And my first prep, I did find it quite hard. But I eventually kind of got over it. And it was literally maybe a couple of months, and all of a sudden I had adjusted into my off-season body. But the thoughts were never that extreme when it came to my body. Everybody deals with an element of body dysmorphia post prep. I really don't think that anybody is immune to it. Competing is very physical driven. And so when you kind of go away from that, it can skew the thoughts that you have around your body, especially when you've been so lean for so long. And especially when it's your first time being that lean as well, it can be very, very hard to see your body kind of go back, because ultimately you do start, you like seeing the lines, you like seeing the abs. It's cool. You get that kind of dopamine hit as well. So adjusting out of it for the first time is always the toughest one. Well, not the toughest one. That's the point of this podcast, but it's always tough. Now, going through different preps and different off seasons, I had actually built quite a fair amount of tools in terms of, I suppose, managing my relationship with food, and also managing the relationship with my body. Now, my second prep, the post show and the reverse, didn't go as I had liked either. I'll get into last year's kind of post show and reverse and how that's impacted me now soon. But going back to 2021, I reversed out of that in a very, very suboptimal state. If you've listened to our previous podcast when it comes to hormonal health and getting blood work and managing stress and your thyroid, I came out of that second prep with my thyroid absolutely in the bin. And to be quite honest, for most people, it will be. Anybody who diets, whether you are in natural or enhanced, you're sorry, not enhanced. If you obviously have exogenous thyroid going in, that is not going to impact things if you keep it in. However, if you are natural, you are going to your thyroid will downregulate, and it can be very, very difficult kind of post-show when it comes to the weight gain, because obviously your thyroid is responsible for metabolism. So when you become, doing less food and eating more, and your thyroid is downregulate, your body is going to gain weight quite rapidly. And that is because it wants to get back into a state, I suppose, of, functioning optimally. And this can take some time. Now, my 2021 post show was difficult in the sense that because my thyroid had literally bottomed out, and bear in mind, I didn't realize this until about six weeks post show, I was dealing with very, very rapid weight gain from not actually eating all that much food. Of course, I was enjoying myself, but it was nothing like the, I suppose, weight gain that I'd experienced previously. And I really put this down to the fact that I was so much leaner in that 2021 season than I was for the season before. So I came out of that prep, that prep, and I was gaining weight quite rapidly. As I said, it was about 1 kilo a week. And I was noticing extreme fatigue. And I mean fatigue to the point that I struggled to get out of bed. I lost all motivation for the gym, and I actually dealt with pretty bad depression. Now, I've struggled with my mental health over the years in terms of anxiety, and I've only kind of come to terms with that recently through therapies. But this was different in the sense that I felt very, very depressed, like clinically depressed, and nothing that I'd ever felt like before. It still makes me quite upset thinking about that time. because I didn't feel like myself. And if you Google kind of symptoms of low thyroid, I was experiencing all of these things. And at the time, Ross and Cal didn't really have the awareness that they do now when it comes to the kind of thyroid and what we were experiencing. And I got my blood work done. It came back that my thyroid is in the bin, and obviously explained a lot of things once we did a little bit more research and understanding about what was going on. So obviously when it comes to your thyroid, it takes a little bit of time to come back, and you can go through that very difficult period of time. Now, it's different for everybody when it comes to, I suppose, regaining that hormonal function back. But a lot of it is dictated by your ability to manage stress. So I was already very, very stressed about the weight gain. I was already stressed about just, the reverse in general. I had kind of anxieties around food, like a lot of us kind of go through in that kind of post-show period, because we don't want to gain weight too rapidly. The feelings of, I suppose, letting go of a prep, and, the lower motivation with that. Obviously, all that is taken into consideration. So that was kind of a really, really challenging part of it. And my ability to manage stress has always been poor. And this goes back to kind of childhood, and I suppose things that I dealt with when I was younger, and pressures that were kind of put on me, and I suppose just my environment as well. So when it came to the I suppose the hormonal function coming back, it was very, very slow. And you have to also look at the menstrual cycle side of things, and that is also going to be impacted by stress. So I knew that if I wanted my cycle to come back, and I wanted my thyroid to get back into a good place, I needed to be able to manage my stress. And this took a little bit of time, and it was very, very difficult. Anybody who competes, when you're kind of getting your cycle back, those kind of couple of weeks where your body is like, the hormones are kind of just trickling back up, it is very, very difficult, the PMS symptoms and how extreme they are. But I eventually got to a point where my body just seemed happy again. It was like something had clicked, my cycle came back. And I know from over the years, I've said it before on podcasts, when my cycle kind of returns, everything is in a happy place. And you have to look at the thyroid as like, when your body is less stressed, your cycle is going to come back. So I do think that the two are very much linked, because obviously your cycle will really, really struggle to come back if your body is under stress and your thyroid is kind of down regulated. So the two kind of came back in tandem together, and I just felt like a different person. And at this stage, I had gained a little bit of weight, more than I had kind of liked, but I knew it was needed in order to get my body back to a good place. So I suppose that I just wanted to give a brief explanation as to how my 2021 post prep I suppose happened. And when it came to the body dysmorphia element of it and the body image, it was very, very tough. I would sit in the bedroom, and this was when I was really struggling to go to the gym because of the fatigue. So that contributed to the body image issues that I was having. You have to remember, the body image is nothing to do with what you look like, but as how you perceive you look like. Okay. And this can be influenced by what we're currently doing at the present, but also how, I suppose, bodies have been relayed to us in the past from when we were younger. So I viewed the weight gain then as a very, very bad thing. I wasn't training, so I immediately thought, because I'm not training, I'm getting out of shape. And that kind of contributed to those feelings. As I said, I would sit kind of in the bed on the days I would find it really tough to go to the gym, and I would just absolutely bawl. I would feel my clothes getting tighter, and that absolutely killed me. And I would say that post-show reverse and body image struggles was way worse than the year previous. And I do kind of put that down to obviously being leaner, so it's going to be a lot harder to reverse out of, but also because of the thyroid issues that I was, or the very, very bad thyroid issues I was experiencing in this kind of post-show reverse as well. So fast forward then, I suppose, to that off season, I got a little bit more comfortable, and I decided when I got COVID in at the end of 2021, I decided to stop tracking and follow kind of a meal plan, intuitive eating approach. And I can't tell you how much this actually helped my body image. From about January of last year until I started prep, I had very, very little low body image days. I had just gotten very comfortable with my off-season body. I was getting really, really strong. I was hitting crazy numbers on the pendulum, RDLs, and I was back feeling myself again. I was back feeling the Grace who I suppose, got into kind of competing again. And it was around the time I got Rohan. It was a very, very enjoyable time. I was enjoying my food. I didn't feel pressured, to eat a certain way. I was kind of just eating as I felt like. And I was weighing myself and I was accepting, I was taking photos of myself and I was kind of just accepting what I saw. And I was really, really proud of the position that I had got to because it was the heaviest I had ever been. I had worked up to 76 kilos and the previous stage weight was, I think it was around 58 kilos. So I was around 18 kilos above my stage weight at this stage, but I'd gotten to a place where I had just completely and utterly accepted it. And I think when it comes to, the body image struggles a lot of us experience, it can, I suppose, get easier over time the more you settle into your off season. Those first couple of months are always going to be the hardest because ultimately you're trying to adjust and you haven't really let go of your prep body, and you're also still thinking in terms of I am X weeks post show now and I've gained X amount of weight, and you see people sharing it left, right, and center. So there's the pressure of sharing that yourself. Can I just say, you do not need to share your body weight with anybody online. And you also shouldn't really compare or say you're X amount above stage weight because your stage weight is nothing to compare to. It is not a normal weight and you are extremely depleted. So I just like to kind of remove those, I suppose, that kind of dialogue as well. And I was taught that from my second post show to just remove that kind of idea. But I suppose to kind of give you an idea, that's how much I was above at that stage as well. So yeah, got quite comfortable in that off season, and I was ready to prep again last year. Now I'm just going to go briefly in through the prep last year, but it was a prep that I felt like I had a little bit more pressure on me, and I suppose the depths that I went to in that prep were more extreme than I had ever gone to before. I was on way more cardio than I'd ever been on comparatively to my first prep when I had very little muscle. I've said this before, but I was on over an hour of cardio by the end. I was on high steps and my food had gotten down to 1,000 calories, and you kind of go as low as you need to. However, I had never gone to that kind of 1,000 bikini girl mark. I'd always kind of gotten in condition on like 1400. So it was very challenging in that sense. And last year I did feel like the pressure kind of got to me and I started to get pretty bad body dysmorphia. Like I said on the last podcast with Hannah, it was roughly at around that kind of 5-6 weeks out mark. I really, really doubted the look. I doubted what I could achieve. I was constantly pick myself apart and I couldn't see anything good in my physique, I suppose. And when you get into competing and you set kind of a big goal, and I never really had the goal of a pro card, but I set the goal of kind of, getting first and being an overall, and I just, you just set the bar higher, I suppose. But with that, you start to, I suppose, compare to the people who are at that level, the pro level. And I found myself just feeling like I was never, I was not there yet, and I was just getting in my head, and in the background I had different personal stress going on, and I suppose the Grace that struggled with anxiety and I suppose comparison when she was younger, and just feelings of failure would creep in on that prep, and it all just got a lot. And I look back at that prep and sometimes I think maybe I wasn't mentally ready, but it's taught me so much. And anyway, we'll talk about I suppose the reverse side of things. I had an expectation for my reverse of only gaining around 7-8 kilos, and it just didn't go that way. And the reason for that is I came out of this last prep, and because I had dieted so much, and my cardio was quite high, I noticed that um my appetite was kind of quite higher. So I felt like I dealt me or not dealt, I felt like I ate a little bit more post show than I had done in previous post shows because it had been so extreme. But there was also the element of, feeling that I had let those around me down, that I didn't achieve what they expected me to achieve. So I dealt with I suppose that guilt post show as well. And I didn't wrap up my season last year, I suppose, fulfilled or proud. So to me, when I started gaining weight, I just feel like an even, I suppose, bigger failure because I wasn't happy with the look at all. I hated myself. I hate saying the word hate, but I hated the look from about 6 weeks out, and I struggled to see anything positive. So when I gained weight, of course, I'm going to feel worse. Well, not of course, but that's how I handled it is, okay, well, if I didn't like how I looked, then what is going to make me kind of like how I look when I'm kind of gaining weight, even though I knew that I needed to gain weight for overall health and to build muscle and to achieve, the goals that I want to achieve in years to come. But that's how I handled it. And it was really difficult because, as I said to you previously, my ability to manage stress is just horrendous. So I struggled similarly in the previous years when it came to the weight gain. I was gaining weight quite rapidly. However, in this period of time, I was also going through symptoms as well. I suppose not as much as the 2021 when it came to fatigue, but different elements. And I went and got my bloods done. And this is something I think I've briefly spoken about before, maybe on the podcast with the Luke Miller, but I dealt with very, very low testosterone. Now, as a competitor, when you prep, like I said, previous to your thyroid, your hormones do downregulate. And coming out of a show, those kind of, I suppose, the process of getting those hormones back into a good state can be very, very challenging. And that's what kind of contributes to a lot of the thing most competitors experience post show and the severity and difficulty of them. So I got my bloods done and I saw that my testosterone had literally bottomed out. And as a female, we do have testosterone, like we spoke about on the podcast with Chris from the Blood Lab. And your testosterone levels have to be in a normal range, and mine was completely in the floor, and that contributed to everything that I was feeling, and it also contributed to the weight gain, the rapid weight gain. And something that has affected me probably the most is the distribution of that weight gain as well. So I started to notice there was a lot of weight gain around my midsection, and I always do carry weight there. But I started to notice it very, very heavily around that area. Now, luckily, I wasn't going through what I went through in 2021 in terms of the lower motivation to train. I was very, very happy that I still had the drive to train and do all that thing, and I was keeping up cardio and all of that kind of thing. But I really struggled seeing my body change in that light and going back to those expectations that I had of that reverse. They just didn't go to plan. So that then contributed to those feelings of failure and guilt, and like I was letting myself down, and that kind of anxiety was kind of creeping in that I had I suppose built from childhood. So what had happened obviously through that time, I was trying to get my cycle back. And I knew the tools that I had learned from all my previous preps was I need to gain weight. I need to gain weight for my health to come back. But the way that I was regaining this weight just absolutely killed me and how I felt in my body. And I was so proud of last year of how I handled the weight gain. And I just felt like this was just different in terms of how it was distributing and how fast it was actually, I suppose how much it was coming on. So from about December time, I wrapped up my shows in October. And from then until about December, I was obviously I was weighing myself. As I said, I was gaining about 1 kilo a week. And I got sick at the start of December, and I had saw that my scale weight had gone up to 68 kilos, which was about 9 kilos above stage weight within, I would like to say, potentially 6 weeks, maybe. And that absolutely destroyed me. And I would find myself crying so much about the position that I was in here. So I stopped weighing myself and I left my coach, Callum. I'm sure everybody has heard of who he is. He's a very, very high level coach in the industry. And I just want to say that, you know, when it came to my struggles, the role that my coach has played has been absolutely nil. But I left Cal and I decided that I needed to do a lot of mental work, because I would wake up and I would look at myself in the mirror and it would destroy me for the entire day. And I had never felt this kind of extreme body image struggles before. As I said previously, like I had it, but it was nowhere near as bad as it was during this kind of reverse. So I started with this coach, and I've no problem naming her because I think credit to her and the work that the team do. But I'm sure everyone has maybe heard of Amelia Thompson and the work that they do. And I started working with Becca, who's one of the coaches on the team. And I basically just explained everything that I was feeling and how I wanted to work on that. And I was ready to kind of commit to it. However, I didn't know how the next few months were going to look. And that kind of instilled a lot of fear in me, because I worried that they would get me, or, you know, Becca would encourage me to quit bodybuilding. She would encourage me to, you know, stop tracking, stop weighing my food, stop analyzing myself in the mirror, all that kind of thing. So the work that I did with Becca was heavily focused around my body image and improving that. So one thing that we started working on was, I suppose, just practicing a little bit of self-compassion. And for somebody who is in the midst of, I suppose, you know, absolutely hating themselves, it was very difficult for me to find any positives in my body. And I've learned the last couple of months through therapies and stuff, and chatting to Becca, that, you know, this kind of fear, and I suppose tendency to think more negatively, does come from my past, and it comes from a place so far beyond bodybuilding and before bodybuilding. And anybody, if you've gone to therapy, you'll know that the conversations you have, you never look to blame what is actually going on in the present. It's very, very rarely that. And ultimately, how we respond and how we think and how we feel about things and perceive the world has the majority of time to do with our experiences in childhood. So I struggled to think very positively about my body. When it came to journaling, I couldn't write because I couldn't think of anything positively. And my brain, from experiences that I won't go into in my past, has been drawn to negativity, and the, you know, that kind of positive mindset and self-compassion and the love yourself, I could not do, because I just couldn't see it. So that took a fair bit of time. I'm not going to lie, it's only in the last month or so have I been able to fully understand it and where these thoughts have come from. But what Becca would get me to do is to check how many times I body check. And if you are a competitor and you are kind of post show and you struggle with kind of body image, a very, very common thing you'll see is, you know, you're checking your body and you're checking your midsection in the mirror to see how you look, or, you know, you're flexing the mirror. And these things contribute to how you feel. You know, if you're constantly analyzing your body, if you're looking back on old photos of yourself and wishing that was you again and posting throwbacks, that's all contributing to it. And even with the kind of posts on social media, one thing that I learned and seen online is, like, if you're only posting those kind of throwbacks or looking back, that shows that, you know, that is the body that you value. So I've been learning all of these things as time goes on. I have been very, very thankful for Becca and the work that she has done with me and the patience that she's had with me, because I honestly, it hasn't been easy. But continued working with her, obviously, right up until now. But I stopped tracking just before I started working with Becca, in the hopes that it would improve my stress, because obviously, going back to it, sorry, I'm going on a tangent, I'm going back and forth, so hopefully you're with me. But to manage my stress, I thought the best thing was to do, and was recommended by Ross, was to stop tracking. So that really, really helped things. It took the pressure off me, and my cycle actually returned then within a matter of weeks. I went home from Christmas, stepped back from tracking again, lowering that stress, trying to get my body back into a good space. And this is why it's so hard, is because you know the things that you need to do to manage your stress, but ultimately those things can actually impact the weight gain, which can thus impact your stress. So it's a very, very fine balance, and it's super difficult to get right sometimes. But December, I would say, was probably the most difficult month in terms of managing that, because I was getting my cycle back and I was dealing with all of the upregulation of all the hormones and everything that was going on. And then Christmas, and you're around all the food, and I was feeling this certain way. So it was ultimately the hardest. And coming into January, then I was still not tracking, and I was in this headspace that I don't think I could ever go back to tracking. I had in my head that I had this negative relationship with it. So I ease myself back into a meal plan coming into January, because I knew that I needed structure, and the bodybuilders and all of us need structure. So Ross had recommended a meal plan. I told Becca, look, this is what I want to do. I'm happy to do it. But ultimately, if I'm doing it, I'm not restricting myself, and I'll still have a meal out or some extra things if I need it. And that really, really worked. And throughout the last kind of couple of months in 2023, I've been slowly easing myself back into structure. And going back to what I said about body image, it's all to do with, I suppose, sometimes the actions that you're taking. And if you feel like you're doing something, your body image can not automatically, but it's likely to improve, because you know that you're doing the very things that can get you closer to a goal. So in my head, obviously getting back to some structure and a meal plan, I had in my head that my composition was going to improve. And I'm not going to say that I haven't had my days the last couple of months, because I absolutely have. And it has definitely not been a straight road, but I feel like it has improved. And if you kind of look at that, I suppose, fat loss graph as well, it's up and it's down, it's up and it's down, it's up and it's down. But ultimately, you're looking at it from, you zoom out, and it does kind of is trending down. And the same has kind of been there with my body image. And throughout this whole process, I've been slowly easing back into just being a bodybuilder and being a competitor again. I had in my head such a negative relationship with bodybuilding, the process of a prep, and all of that kind of thing. And I almost felt guilty doing this podcast, because I felt like it was so far away from how I was feeling. But it was giving me kind of, I suppose, a connection to the industry again. And I was learning more, and I was talking to more people. And I realized that so many of us go through this very thing. But I ultimately thought I was never going to compete again. And I thought that it had absolutely destroyed me. But as I said, the more I've been working with Becca, and the more I've been doing calls, and the more I've just become more self-aware. And I suppose just getting deeper into my off season, it's always going to get easier. But I realized that, the issues that I've been dealing with are so much deeper rooted than bodybuilding. And if you look, anybody who's kind of struggling, sorry, I'm really going off on a tangent, but anybody who kind of is struggling, whether that's an off season or prep, you have to kind of look back at your past, as deep as that sounds. If you watch the Diary of the CEO, the first thing they always ask before they get into conversations with people is their past. And the same with therapy. So it's kind of getting to the root of that as well. So I started to, from resenting bodybuilding, I started to love it again. And I started to realize that actually I got into this for different reasons, for feeling strong and because I loved my body. I didn't start competing because I hated it, going back to the very, very first reason. And I started to realize that I didn't really like a meal plan, and that tracking was very much my preferred approach to food. So it kind of has all come like for full circle when it comes to the nutrition side of things. So that's shown massive progress within myself and the relationship that I have with the process. So I've been tracking for quite some time after following a meal plan. And when it came to weighing myself, now I said I stopped weighing myself at the start of December of last year, and I didn't weigh myself for quite some time, because I knew that the number on the scales was ultimately going to really, really upset me. And I felt like I was making progress. So I felt like, I don't need to know the number. And people are always asking, oh, how many kilos have you gained post show? As I said, I don't think you need to kind of share that anymore, but I just need to get that number out of my head for a while until I felt like I was mentally ready, and I had gotten to a point where no matter what I saw, I would just I suppose accept it. So fast forward a month or so. This is all a big massive timeline, but February time I think it was, I decided to step on the scales, and I am currently, still have been, 76 kilos, which was my peak off season weight last year. Now, although the number kind of shocked me, it gave me a little bit of, I suppose, peace knowing where I was at. And I felt like, you know what, if I'm 76 kilos, I can change that if I wanted to, but I knew I had still had work to do when it came to, I suppose, accepting the way I look and all that kind of thing. So I'd weighed myself, and I've been continuously kind of weighing myself this since then, and I've actually stayed the same weight despite kind of I suppose tracking and everything like that. But I feel like my body image has improved, and this, if that doesn't tell you anything when it comes to body image, I don't know what does. So when I first weighed myself, I felt incredibly different. Weighed myself now, and I feel a little bit more positive. Um, and that's because I do feel like I'm doing a little bit more. I'm controlling my food a little bit more, and I'm in a lot more of a kind of structure as well. I do feel like my composition has improved, albeit the scales hasn't showed that, but I do feel like it has improved as well. So that's where I was at with the kind of weighing myself kind of things. I suppose just touching on, the gym and what I would wear and clothing and stuff like that. I'm still not where I want to be fully with that yet. Anybody who's listening knows, when you're kind of in that post-show phase, you tend to, want to wear more oversized clothing and all that kind of thing. And I still feel like I'm there when it comes to things, because the weight gain around my midsection is something I'm still very, very conscious of. So I do find myself wearing a little bit more kind of baggy hoodies, baggy tops. I'm quite happy with my lower body, so that's something I'm, quite grateful that it's a body part that I don't mind wearing shorts in. It's always been kind of my midsection, I suppose. And even, when it comes to the midsection kind of, I suppose, struggles, that's something when I was in school, going back to that kind of 15, 16-year-old, it was always a body part I was like hyper focused on, because I never really had a slim waist. So I kind of, I suppose, envied girls that had slimmer waists than me. So that's kind of contributed to the body image struggles that I've had the last while around my midsection. I'm still not 100% there yet, just not very genetically gifted in that area, but it's something I'm working around, and I suppose managing my thoughts with. And that's where kind of Becca has kind of come in, and just the conversations that I'm having with myself, catching myself out where these kind of thoughts are coming from. And yesterday I wore a top to the gym that I couldn't dream of wearing a couple of months ago. And I had my final call with my coach Becca, because I wrapped up working with her this month, and we just went through how I felt and the conversations that I had with myself when I put on that top, because I would immediately, again, going back to that kind of negative thought process, anytime I wore something, I'd immediately think kind of negatively about how I looked, and I couldn't see the kind of positives in anything. So yesterday was a massive, massive turning point for me in terms of my ability to wear a little bit more kind of comfortable clothes, I guess, and not comfortable clothes, but more, I suppose, tighter, more revealing clothes, clothes that you kind of like look nice in the gym, that isn't kind of baggy stuff. Again, I'm not against wearing like oversized stuff. Even when I'm lean, I wear oversized stuff. I think whatever you're comfortable with. But for me, it's a sign that I'm moving in the right direction when it comes to kind of how I feel and the confidence that I have. But I suppose just kind of wrapping it up and speaking a little bit more about the therapies. I have a long way to go when it comes to, I don't want to say a long way, but this is why I'm taking the year out. I have a bit to go when it comes to managing my thoughts. As I said, time and time again, that do come from childhood experiences and things that have been said. And I suppose my inner then self-critic, but I'm learning that I can kind of change that, and it's going to take a little bit of work. And as I said, yesterday was a huge win for me in terms of how I managed the thoughts when I wore what I did, because I had a couple of negative thoughts, but I was able to turn them into something positive. Or if I worried about what other people said, I didn't think, okay, they're thinking negatively. I thought that they're thinking positively. So I've been retraining my brain, and that's really what this year is about, is being able to train my body and build my physique, but also train my mind to handle the thoughts that come my way. Because the reality is preps challenge you, off seasons challenge you. There's just no doubt about it, and every competitor goes through it. But it's ultimately how you're able to manage those thoughts that will lead to the outcome. And in my case, and I'm sure in a lot of people who's listened to this case, is, you might just handle it differently to other people. Other people might handle it better, and I just haven't really been able to manage those kind of thoughts. Either bodybuilding is and competing does hold a big place in my heart. I don't like saying all these things and making out like I'm bashing a sport, because, as I said, and I've said previously, time and time again, any sport can give you, can have you suffer mentally, dealing with body dysmorphia, comparison, guilt, all self-doubt, everything, pressures. It's not just limited to bodybuilding, and unfortunately bodybuilding does get a big bad rap because it is so physique driven. So of course, if you feel a certain way, you immediately bash the very thing that you probably think it is. However, a lot of these things come with, competing at a high level and playing a high sport. So, I think when it comes to, body image, it's like there could be, absolutely anything if you were in a different sporting endeavor. So that's something I've kind of learned over the next few while, and it's kind of made me feel, I suppose, less resentful towards less resentful towards the sport of bodybuilding itself. And I truly feel that if competitors can do that kind of background work and that mental work, it will make every stage of the process a whole lot easier. And the people who are at the top of their game are people that have been able to manage that. I'm not saying the top Olympians and the Laura and the Jennifer Dorys don't struggle, but they have been able to do mental work in the background to get them to where they are now as well, and have them as successful as they are. So that is my goal for this year, is to work on that. I am currently planning on doing a little mini cut, but I'm just calling it, a goal to improve my composition over these next few months coming into summer. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I think, once you're doing the mental work, you can carry through yourself to any phase. People bash the idea of dieting and it ruining your body image, but ultimately, sometimes going in the other direction can really, really hurt your body image too. So it's about managing those thoughts at either ends of the spectrum. So that is what I will be doing for this coming year. I want to thank my coach Becca for everything that she's done, and obviously my partner Ross, who's been through it all with me. And it has been a tremendous pressure on the relationship, him having to deal with it, and everything like that. So I'm excited to get to a better place with it all, and ultimately, be content in my body again, back to, how I used to feel. And I'm already on that path. I can feel it and feel confident in summer, and hopefully compete again in a much, much better headspace. And the tools that you learn from all of these things, will last me a lifetime. Just like I said, the first prep taught me everything that I need for my second, and the second to my third. And this one just gone has taught me a shit ton, and it's pushed me to do the mental work that I needed. Because ultimately, like, even if I wasn't competing, I know that what I dealt with when I was younger, and even leading up until I moved away to Manchester, I know that would impact if I did anything, if I played basketball, if I worked a 9 to 5, those anxieties and those feelings and the negative thought process would carry into anything that I did, regardless of whether it was bodybuilding or not. So that is my approach to this coming year. As I said, sorry, I would love to compete again, but just be in a different headspace. and view myself better, and, go through a prep and enjoy it, and, feel how I did on that kind of first prep, and not have that, that kind of body dysmorphia that takes away from things. And like I said on the podcast with Hannah, be proud of my placings. And sometimes you need to go through these struggles to, come out the other side and become better. And that's not just restricted to competing or bodybuilding. It can be applied to any aspect of your life, really. That, these things are put in your way, so you can become stronger and come out better. And I know, as I said, those kind of anxieties will carry through to me in later in life. So I'm thankful that I recognize these things now, and I can kind of put the work in and be challenged and mentally challenged, but become more self-aware as a result of that. So I hope I covered everything. I feel like I did, but I'm sure this topic will come up in future podcasts again. I do want to get another bikini athlete on to speak about their struggles, and I suppose just, comparing how everybody is different when it comes to how they feel and how they approach kind of off seasons as well. And one thing that I do want to say, obviously, when it comes to all this, and I said it before, please get your blood work done when it comes to that kind of thing, because as much as, these body image things can be psychological, there is a physiological element that we go through as females post show that can kind of contribute to how we feel in our bodies as well. So I strongly encourage that you get that work done. You work with your coach, you communicate with your coach, and you do, you do any mental work that you feel is necessary, and I suppose delve deeper into your feelings, because even, just going off on a tangent here before I wrap up, but even like your habits, post prep, your eating habits, maybe your tendency to overeat or your tendency to undereat, like these are coming from, in most cases, experiences from way before kind of competing. So I urge you, if you feel a certain way, a negative way, or something is happening kind of post prep, to kind of delve deeper and ask the questions and reach out to the right people, speak to your coach, message me if you feel like you're struggling, message other people, have that community of athletes that are sharing what they're going through as well, so you don't feel alone, and don't be afraid to speak to someone as well, a therapist. And the Amelia Thompson coaches are great, and I really admire the work that they do. But I feel now that I'm ready to kind of take the next step as well. But I'm going to wrap this up here. It's been a very long one, so I really hope you guys have kept with me. And hopefully off the back of this podcast, you understand a little bit more what I've gone through the kind of last couple of months, and you can take some value from it when it comes to your own kind of post shows. But yeah, I hope you appreciate the kind of transparency and the honesty as well, guys, and vulnerability as well, because speaking about these kind of things is never easy. And I know, getting the guests on that we do, speaking about their kind of struggles, it's never easy. But this is the point of the podcast. It's called the Backstage Bikini Podcast for a reason. And it would be a shame for Jade and I to not kind of share our struggles as well and give you an insight into that. But I want to thank you guys so much for listening. If you do have any questions or anything you kind of want to chat to me about when it comes to body image, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here for anybody in that sense. I've been through it all, and I'd like to think I'm coming out the other end now and I can help at least one of you. But please share in your stories, and we will catch you in the next one.